Hello, Hovians, and welcome back to the third channel. Boom, 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 boom. So, we don't know what that was, right? So you're probably wondering, Tom, where have you been? Well, I set up Eurovision World channel number 13. We've got too much Empire stuff going on, so we're on it. But I am back interviewing some amazing people. When I say amazing, I really do mean amazing. Now, you could have probably wondered during this interview, why is it not on your second channel? Well, the second channel no longer gaming, so we moved away and witted on about QI, as you do. So let's get into this amazing interview. Today, I'm here with a special guest. They are best known for Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit, and if you don't know what that is, and you know him from other, and from the live stage show Wi-Fi Wars, it's one and only Steve McNeil.
Hello, Tom Mason. It's a pleasure to be
here. Hello. So let's go right back to the very beginning when you were as the Scottish would say, a wee nipper.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into the whole video game thing?
So the first console that we had in my house was actually a Pong console, because I'm that old. I'm not quite that old. Pong was out in in the home in 1976. But my mum and dad had got like one of the knockoff Pong consoles that you had. It went through a black and white telly, Tom, if you can imagine such a thing. Because you're boyish. I know you're an old soul, as you said, but you look young. But yes, I had two little dials on two little controllers on like wired. It wasn't wireless, and used to play Pong. It had 4 versions of Pong on it. It had Pong, football, squash, and practice, the 4th sport, and that was where it began. After that, I had an Amstrad CPC 464. So we moved on to cassettes, and for a long time it was computers, because in the UK, sort of been forgotten now, but it's more computers than consoles. So I had like an Atari ST and then Amiga 500 before I then got a SNES and then got into console land. So that is where it all began. So I've never not had a video game console in my home ever.
Yeah. And then how did this gaming fuel you into doing comedy? How did that lead into where you ended up?
Right. Well, it's actually the other way around. I mean, what happened is me and Sam were doing comedy for years and couldn't quite make that work. So then we reached into our toy box and pulled out a Nintendo Wii, because I was a gamer, and to be honest, we just thought that at the point that we did Go 8-Bit for the first time as a live show, we'd already done 3 years of Edinburgh as a sketch double act, and we thought we were going up again. And it's quite hard work, Tom, going to Edinburgh. It's an entire month of having indifferent Scottish people glare at you while you wait for a 3-star review from funnyjokes.biz or similarly pointless websites. And so for fun, to keep our sanity, we decided we'd, on a Friday and Saturday night, book a late night slot at the Pleasance and just get all our comedian friends drunk and play video games on the basis that would probably be entertainment. Or even if it wasn't, we'd get drunk with our friends and play Mario Kart.
Yeah. And as the viewers there, so I was getting in a prop. I have the Wii U. I haven't.
Goodness me. For a minute, I thought you were putting out a Steam Deck, but instead, no, it's the not a Steam Deck.
Yeah, not a Steam Deck, and then I have the Switch, because it lent to what I was going to say. So you were saying how you played the Wii. Well, I don't have the Wii with me. I have the Wii U in my hand.
I didn't expect you to. I'm amazed you've got the Wii U there, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I've got all sorts in this room. So what made you decide to use a Wii to play the game?
The reason I chose a Wii for going, you know what, Tom? I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. Well done. That sounded patronising. It's not meant as it, but nobody's ever gone, why a Wii though? The reason it was a Wii, Tom, I'm glad you asked. It was because the Wii at the time, it was 2013. The Wii was old and cheap, so I could get a couple of backups. But also, crucially, the virtual console on the Wii was very good for retro games. So it had a pretty solid library of NES, SNES, even a few N64 games. I think at that point it had a little bit of Sega, a little bit of arcade, TurboGrafx 16 emulation for Bomberman, which is brilliant live. Never did it on the TV show, they wouldn't let me, but Bomberman we used to do in the live show. And so the Wii was a perfect system because it was tiny, cheap. It had really good retro game collection that you could download directly onto it. And it meant that we could just use that hardware with its controllers to hand to guests. So it was a very, very simple way to deliver the show.
Yeah. And now jumping forward to so I can get my niche reference out the way.
Sure.
So in an episode of Dara Breen's Go 8-Bit DLC.
Oh God.
Yeah. Watch where this goes. So there was a segment of you doing the cheat segment where where the joke was that you really didn't like it, but you started to mention about indie games, and you run about a website. So what is the best website to get indie games on?
Well, oh goodness me. Well, when I made the show, I was quite into GOG.com. So there's lots of good old stuff on there. In terms of indie now, I mean, Steam's pretty amazing, right? As we're recording this, the Steam sale began last night, and I've already spent a fortune on there on indie games. So I think if you need indie games now, it's all on Steam, right? Yeah. But back then, GOG.com was the website that I used to go to for niche things.
And there is the niche reference over and done with. I mean, many people would have seen the show, but none of them would remember that exact moment. And remember to
no one does, Tom. Only you, but that's nice. Yeah. Well, we made that for you.
Yeah. Well, I just thought I googled it afterwards, and I thought I couldn't find anything. So I thought one day I'll get it. I waited a few years.
You did.
Yeah. Patience. You always need patience. Now, with Dara Breen Go 8-Bit, where did that come from? Because obviously the tale is old as time. It isn't invented by Dara. Dara's just the what the TV industry calls a pretty face on the cover.
Beautiful face, a beautiful face. So the process of getting Go 8-Bit on, it was actually quite short really for telly, because the first live show we did, it was at the Canal Cafe Theatre in London, was beginning of June 2013, and the TV show got commissioned, I think, January 2016. So less than 3 years from getting drunk in a pub with a Nintendo Wii to filming or being paid to film a TV show, which isn't long for telly. But what happened is we went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and that went very well. It's the only time that me and Sam have had any sort of buzz. And so then we started doing a monthly residency in London. And every month, Rohan Acharya, the wonderful producer who made Go 8-Bit get on the telly, invited everybody in telly to come and see this awesome show we'd made, in the hopes they would put it on the telly. And every month they said they'd come and didn't. And the one channel that did actually turn up occasionally and give us feedback and seemingly like the idea was UK TV. Specifically, there was a guy called Simon Longdon. No. Yes? No. No. It's not Simon Longdon. Simon Lupton. There's three Simons in this story: Simon London, Simon Longdon, and Simon Lupton. Simon Lupton was working at UK TV at the time, along with another guy called Ian Coyle, who ended up commissioning the TV show. And they were very supportive over that 2-year period where we developed it in the live environment. But it became apparent that despite being incredibly funny and charming, Tom, me and Sam weren't famous enough to be on the telly, because that's the rules. So we needed a famous, funny person to be on the telly, to be a safe pair of hands to alleviate the anxieties of commissioning executives. So there were a bunch of people we approached. We wanted Ramesh Ranganathan to do it at one point, but he, at the time, hilariously, wasn't considered famous enough to approach, if you can believe it. Warwick Davis was very keen to host it. I don't know if I've ever talked about that before, but yeah, so he was really keen. So that would have been a very different show, but a really fun one. He was very passionate. But Dara was always sort of top of the list, because he more than anybody in the UK can host a comedy panel show, as is proved by Mock the Week and everything he did for that show, but also was genuinely passionate about games and tech. So he had the chops to back it up. So he wasn't just funny, he was also games. So I think Ro had known him for a long time, so we courted him, and the channel quite liked the idea. And eventually there were two, I think Dara was considering doing it, and then we used some Wi-Fi Wars games, which is the other show you talked about, in the final live show we did. And we got Dara hooked, because he got very excited and got upset when he got booted out of one of the games. So we hooked Dara, and with the Dara on board, we were allowed to make a TV show, because that's how telly works.
Yeah, well, sadly, Dara Breen's now out of the job. that he was doing Mock the Week. And a fun fact that I'll give you now is that in New Zealand there's a program called 7 Days, which is it's like an international remake of Mock the Week.
Right.
Mock the Week has ended, and they've lasted longer. So
Brilliant.
Dara can now put his head in his hands. So
I mean, Dara's got loads of money, so I won't worry too much. He's fine.
and with having Dara on board, did that make it life easier when you went in the studio because you had the studio experience where?
Oh God, yeah, yeah. I mean, Dara was always really generous because, like me and Sam, we'd done lots of comedy, but we hadn't done it on that scale before. Like, because Go 8-Bit, for those who haven't seen it, was a proper big light entertainment shiny floor show in a big studio. It was proper telly. It had a revolving stage, for goodness sake. And so we weren't used to that. Dara was very at home in front of an audience, sort of warming them up himself. We did have warm-up people when we had pauses in record, but Dara would always talk to the audience at the start. And very generous, reminding people that actually it's called Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit because telly, but actually it was mine and Sam's baby, and that he'd then come across. He was always very generous and supportive. I have nothing but nice things to say about Dara O'Brien. Except the fact I'm pretty sure he doesn't really like me, but I think that's because we're both quite awkward. I think we're both of an era where I don't think you get diagnosed when you're on the spectrum, and I think both of us are just awkward in conflicting ways around each other.
So how did you then, because you had Dara, you had you two, obviously, you had this shiny studio. How did you get? I think I'm probably going to mispronounce it because I'm 50% confident on a name, but how did you get Ellie involved?
You've got her name exactly right, Ellie Gibson. So Ellie was actually involved before Dara was. She was working at Eurogamer. She was a journalist, still is, I guess. But she was actively a journalist at Eurogamer. When we first met her, she came along to one of the early London gigs that we did, I think with a couple of friends, and was very, very kind. And at the time, it seems ridiculous now because it's such a big thing, but she was just starting doing Scummy Mummies, which is a podcast and then live show with Helen Thorne. So she was just starting to drift strangely as she was moving from gaming to comedy, as we were moving from comedy to gaming, and we sort of met in the middle. So Ellie was a very supportive person in that industry. And then when we quite quickly, a guy called Gareth Swan, there's lots of people I'm very lucky to have met. A guy called Gareth Swan, who is I think now he does PR in gaming. I can't remember exactly what his role was at the time, but he managed to get us our own stage at Eurogamer's EGX in 2014. So they built us a stage for Go 8-Bit when it was just me and Sam. And we did 4 whole days of content. So we did the Go 8-Bit live show, but we also did panel talks and interviews and other more informal competitions with the audience. But we had Ellie on that stage with us as one of the co-hosts to do the more serious stuff because we weren't games journalists. So when you got David Braben on to talk about Elite, Ellie did that bit because she could actually talk knowledgeably to people. But then she also got involved in the show. I can't remember if we ever had a guest before she worked on the show. I don't think we did. I don't think her and Helen were that far along in the comedy thing at the time we were doing the live show. But so when it came to the point of developing the TV show, and if there was no one who was a more obvious choice than Ellie to take on that sort of games expert role in the show. We did get quite a few other people who I won't name because I don't think that's appropriate, but people you've heard of were also in the games industry. So we did get quite a few people in sort of, they auditioned when we cast it, but I think it would have been difficult for them to exceed Ellie because she again had that comedy and gaming thing.
She had a good background.
Yeah.
So was Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit, like, obviously it's focused on gaming. Was that a big thing in the, because I'm not in it, but in the gaming world, was it a big show for the hard gaming?
It's funny. Well, it's hard to make gamers happy, isn't it? So, and no one is more vocally unpleasant than a disgruntled gamer who thinks they're better than you. So there was definitely plenty of non-constructive feedback on the quality of the show from a certain subset, just toxic internet people really. But by and large, it was very successful. It did very well for the channel. Lots of people watched it. People seemed to enjoy it. Like in it, when it was at its peak, it was, it was like trending and topping out on Twitter when it was on, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So what the main criticism people had of it, was probably on the occasions where it appeared that the guests hadn't got a clue what they were doing and couldn't play games. But by and large, I mean, I've talked about this before, but by and large, their struggle with playing competently was a result of lag on the studio floor rather than their inability to play the game or know what they were doing. There was a sort of an unforgivable amount of delay between the controllers and the big screen that we played on in the studio, which was regrettable.
Yeah, and like Dara brings Go 8-bit. I'm gonna call it Go 8-bit because I'm gonna get too repetitive saying the words Dara.
Also, I'm sick of hearing his name. Yes.
So with Go 8-bit, it's probably the only panel show I've ever watched more than like once. Like QI's on all the time, you watch it whatever it's on, but Dara Green, I take the effort to re-download it onto my TV, re-watch it all, get obsessed with it.
That's lovely.
And then realise I watched too much of it and then stop watching it and then watch DLC and think, right, I think I might need to give a break now. My eyes are getting too repetitive seeing Dara's face.
I think that's fair.
And then moving on to Mock the Week and thinking, no, I've had enough now. Move away.
Are you just trying to tell me that you're obsessed with Dara? Is that what this? I can't get him to meet you. I can't book him for you.
I mean, Dara is he's a very busy tall man.
He is a very busy tall man.
He is but this show wouldn't work without you and Sam because he's just there whittering on. You lot are doing the effort. You're actually playing well, apart from in DLC when you get him to show his chops and he hasn't got any chops.
Hasn't got any chops. No gaming chops whatsoever.
No gaming chops. So how did 8-bit turn into DLC 8-bit? Because DLC seemed like it was like not like connected, but it is connected because it was slightly different. How did 8-bit turn into DLC?
Yeah, okay. So what happened was series one of no one really, like, they let us make it, but no one really expected to go 8-bit to be a success, really, because the received wisdom in TV is that you can't put gaming on TV. No one will watch it, and it's not a thing. And the day after the first episode went out, UK TV had this big event, which I don't really know what it was, but it was like there were lots of talks for stakeholders and industry people and important telly people, I guess. And they got the overnight numbers for how many people have watched Go 8-bit. And it's the only time I've really been treated like a celebrity, Tom, which is appropriate because I'm not, and I find that whole side of things grotesque. But for one day only, we were hot property. And so because the TV show had got good numbers, the conversation was immediately then about doing more. So quite quickly they recommissioned us. And what UK TV did quite a lot of the time, it's why if you look at Dave's as a channel's history, a lot of things get 3 series and then die because they make one series on a pump and go, oh, it's not rubbish, commission loads of it, and then run it into the ground and bury it and make a new thing instead. And that's sort of what happened with us. So they commissioned series 2 and 3 at the same time. And alongside that, also commissioned a spin-off show to run concurrent with it. So that was 30 episodes of telly off the back of 6, all of which we filmed, because we filmed series 2 and 3 almost back to back. Originally, it was going to be one block, but they needed a bit more pre-production time to do the second block. I think we did 8 and 12. But in the space of about 2.5 months, we filmed all 30 of those shows, and the pre-production time on it was not a lot. I think we probably had 3-4 months to do all the work to make all of those shows exist. And so Go 8-bit DLC, one of the many versions of the show that had been floated around when it was evolving was whether the show might have a more magazine style rather than be a panel show. It ended up being a panel show, and that was the right thing. That's what, because Go 8-bit was always a live sort of battle thing. But there were aspects of the show, like the Hall of Game was originally a format point in the main TV show when it was being developed, where we sort of picked a game of the week. So it was going to be the 2 guests would pitch a game to Dara in the TV show is what it would have been. And again, that was the right thing to not have it in there. But so that's what that was. And then essentially Rohan, who was the producer, his background was in comedy. Actually, the first comedy thing I ever did was directed by him. And Go 8-bit DLC was made for about £3, And what happened was, whereas Go 8-Bit, the main show, was essentially a series of compromises of the original vision to make what was perceived to be the correct generic TV implementation of gaming on telly. With DLC, there was so little money spent on it, and all of the important people were so focused on the main show that all the comedy people that like games actually got to hide in the corner and make a show they liked. So a lot of gamers say they prefer DLC to the main show, and certainly for me and Ro and some of the others on the team, I think we had a lot more fun making it. Like, it was a really, really stupid show. The Steve Cheats bits that you mentioned was the conceit of that was Ian Coyle, who'd commissioned Go 8-Bit, said, well, in the olden days, they always had like a cheat section on gaming shows, so there should be one of them. And I said that, well, that's not a thing anymore. There's the internet now. No one needs that. And also, cheats aren't really a thing like they were. Like, they make you pay to unlock stuff now. You don't. But he was adamant we do it. So I did it on the basis that I would write the script berating Ian Coyle at UK TV for making. So that's why those Tony Raw was a thing. It was basically me publicly for being stupid enough to put a cheat section in the show. So with his blessing, I think. But yeah, so like all the bits where we had Dara playing games, we filmed all that in a single day. Like we filmed all 10 episodes of Go 8-Bit DLC in 1 week, in 5 days. We filmed 2 a day, 5 days in a row, in the roof of the production office. I mean, it was ridiculous how cheap it was. But we got some really nice guests like Scroobius Pip and Jamali and those two from Pot of the Weasley Twins. And, it was ridiculous. But it was a really fun show. I don't know if that's answered your question, but no one ever asked me about Go 8-Bit DLC, so I just told you loads of things in my head.
I do really like DLC. I like both of them equally.
Good.
But I quite like how DLC, with one of the episodes that I really loved was the one with Susan Calman in it, because not because it's Susan Calman, it's because you learn more about her as herself. So in everything she does, she's funny woman. But then when you have a show like this, that's not, oh, here's an audience, make them laugh. It's more of oh, here's a bunch of idiots that want to make this thing, and we just want you in it. It makes them bring out their truth.
Yeah.
Her love of gaming, I didn't really know much about that before she was on DLC, because then it shows how much you now know about her from this small show that didn't seem as massive as the other one, but had the same amount of love as the other one. Yeah,
and I think that's true. I think that's fair as well. I think that's partly why those who resisted the Go 8-Bit TV show maybe did so, is that DLC allowed us to contextualize why the guests were there in a way that the main show didn't. The main show got straight into games, and if they weren't good, people got, they slagged them off on Twitter. Whereas the DLC, I think we had one person for the entire show, and you got to know them, and you sort of did the show around them. Yeah.
And so from DLC and 8-Bit ending, and then everything goes, how did then that format that now didn't belong on TV but now belonged to you and Sam, hopefully, probably.
No, it didn't.
How did that then turn into Wi-Fi Wars? Because that is a brilliant concept in itself, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, it's basically the Wi-Fi that everyone says is rubbish. In this version, is quite good, and that can get millions of people all at any given time to play the same game. It's very clever, and I'm astounded. And when I heard about it, I sort of regretted that I didn't come up with that idea. That happens quite a lot with me. So how did Wi-Fi Wars become its...
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure lots of people have come up with the idea, but actually doing it requires one special genius, which is, of course, Rob Sedgbeer, because this is where Rob Sedgbeer enters the story. So as far as Go 8-Bit getting cancelled, it wasn't cancelled, it wasn't renewed, technically. That's the thing in telly. Nothing gets cancelled, it just didn't get renewed. Rob, we didn't own Go 8-Bit. Series 1, we got paid dreadfully, me and Sam. And so for series, when it all got recommissioned, we got the loads. We basically gave the production company the rights to Go 8-Bit, so they pay us properly. So that was in the absence of any sort of negotiating power, we gave them the thing so we could have some money. So Sam and I cannot do anything as Go 8-Bit ever, because it's not ours. We sold that. But Wi-Fi Wars pre-exists Go 8-Bit, the TV show. What happened was, when we first did Go 8-Bit as a live show, a lady called Elizabeth Knowles, lovely lady, who was a fan of me and Sam's. We did sketch comedy. Her boyfriend's really into games, and this was Rob Sedgbeer. And he came up to us after one of the shows and said, I've made this thing, but I think you might like to use in your show. And what it was a version of Pong, where at the time about 6 people could get their phones out and control the game of Pong. It's actually more than 6. He'd done it. There's a thing called Festival of the Spoken Nerd, which Steve Mould, Helen Arney, Matt Parker run. So it had its Wi-Fi Wars' tech had its first ever airing at that gig, but they weren't bright enough to use it, so I had it. So thanks to them. And so we used to do a lock-in at the end of the Go 8-Bit live show where Rob would bring his toys and we'd see if it worked, and it often didn't. But every month he got a bit better at it, and that then became part of the show. So the first Wi-Fi Wars show in Edinburgh was sort of show 1, didn't have it in it. But when we went up for the second year in a much bigger room, at that point, the show had Pong as a finale. So the audience would all play the game that decided which team, mine or Sam's, won. But also in each round, the audience would vote on which contestant they thought was going to win and score points for themselves based on whether they got it right or not. So there's sort of a diluted version of that in the TV show, which is based on that same tech where the audience vote. But you don't really see the context of it as it was in the original live show, sort of neutered a little bit. And then after that, we just before we filmed the TV pilot for Go 8-Bit, we had a gig at the Backyard because that's where our residency was then, because again we'd moved to a bigger room, and somebody from the Royal Institution came along, and we used to do a thing where we used to get a comedian to hold a tray of champagne glasses and put them on a VR roller coaster and make them try to do their stand-up set whilst smashing glasses on a roller coaster. Because before VR came out, Rob had like dev kit of the Oculus, as it was at the time, and they loved that. So we ended up doing a version of that in the Christmas lectures at the RI, which was amazing for me and Rob. And Sam was busy doing, he's talked publicly about the other thing he was doing, but I don't know how much. Sam was working on another thing, sort of secret thing in telly, and couldn't be around, but me and Rob went, well, bugger it, we're going to do it anyway. So me and Rob did the roller coaster thing as part of the Christmas lectures. And as 2 nerds who loved the RI Christmas lectures growing up, we wanted to continue that relationship with them, and so said to them, well, maybe we could come back and give a talk about all the other stuff that Rob's created. And they called our bluff and said yes. So they booked us in for the summer program in 2015. And at that time, all we had was the vote and Pong. So Rob had to retrospectively create an hour's worth of tech that we'd pretended existed because we wanted to do a talk at the Royal Institution. And that was how Wi-Fi Wars was born. So we started using those other games and tech in Go 8-Bit as a live show, Whack-A-Mole, with, I can't remember who's in the Rob Beckett and someone else in it. But a few of Rob's games got used in the TV show, but we started doing it as its own thing. It was originally called what was it called? Something Not Required, or Smartphone Required, or something dreadful as like a working title. And then Wi-Fi Wars eventually settled. And when the TV show got commissioned, nobody wanted to pay Rob properly. So Rob was technical manager on the TV show begrudgingly because he knew about computers, but people didn't really appreciate how important an element the computers and the games were in a computer game show. So whereas me and Sam got bought out on Go 8-Bit, no one bought Rob's tech so as a result, me and Rob actually retained ownership of the important, clever bit that we'd done, because all Go 8-Bit was saying, what if comedians play video games? And I'm not sure that's something I can sell anyway. I did, but I'm not sure what use that is to anybody to buy it. Whereas Rob's tech is legit. You know, we've done 7 annual lectures at the Royal Institution now about his tech. Like, we're just about to do a Christmas show there again, Christmas special. We're going to be hopefully, touch wood, we're doing the Christmas lectures for the 4th time with the new thing that Rob's building. So like our residency in London is at the Royal Institution with Wi-Fi Wars, and, you know, we've done it on Twitch, we're touring it around, we've, you know, been flown all over the place to do it. It's but it's strange because Wi-Fi Wars exists as a separate thing, but actually what Wi-Fi Wars is the evolution of what Go 8-Bit Live would have become if Sam had been available, or the powers that be had actually recognized the value of what it is that they had in front of them.
Yeah.
So for me and Rob, Wi-Fi Wars is just a continuation of that timeline of a development of an interactive gaming show. obviously at some point in time it fractured into two, and Go 8-bit became that thing, and Wi-Fi Wars became the other thing. But I think for me and Rob, Wi-Fi Wars is the pure progression of the idea, whereas Go 8-bit is what a committee of people who didn't care about games turned it into.
Yeah, and it's good how you've managed to find it, like do it on Twitch, and if you YouTube it's on YouTube, and it just works so well, because when you have something that you're so passionate about, having somewhere to share it so the whole world, but you still own the rights, is still the thing. That's why YouTube is become successful. That's why like a lot of like comedians now are creating their own stuff for YouTube. They keep the rights instead of going to Channel 4 and going, "Hello, here's my idea," and they pass it back and go, "Oh, we don't want it," but then they don't have the rights for it anymore, because Channel 4 have just said, "Oh, we're locking in our lock of good ideas that aren't very good."
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it as well is it's not always necessarily about the ownership, which sometimes you can retain ownership, but what it is, certainly the process of getting anything made in telly can be exhausting, because there's two sorts of people, aren't there? There's people who create, and there's people who control, and they never get on. And I think as a creator, what's really nice is that it is increasingly hard for those people that sit between you and the realization of your vision as intended. It's hard for them to convince you they're actually necessary anymore, because you can find an audience and find success on your own terms. If you still have to be lucky, but you always did. But you can at least do it on your own terms and be proud of it, and you can monetize it in various ways if you're successful. But not only that, the money that you get from success in broadcast is, unless you're one of the lucky few, severely diminished from what it was. So I didn't retire off of Go 8-bit. I earned a bit of money for a year, but it didn't really touch the sides overall in terms of my life. And certainly the year after the TV show got binned, me and Rob made more money doing Wi-Fi Wars than we did on the TV show.
Yeah. And not only have you done Wi-Fi Wars and 8-bit and all this, you've also, right, this is the best bit, you've also...
Is it? Well, let's see.
written a book.
Oh, don't forget the DVD as well, the stand-up DVD.
Yeah, you've also done that, and then you also turned this into a audio book as well, which
I did.
If anyone hasn't listened to, and anyone loves the sound of his nice from this, well,
it's an acquired taste.
You're in for a good treat of 7 hours. Because I know exactly how long it is. 7 hours. So how did this like book come about? Because it's not like all about your life like the standard book. It's about your passion and your extensive knowledge of the video game industry.
Yeah. So it sort of came up tangentially in that the TV show was successful, and you don't have to keep holding the book up, but it's very sweet that you are. There were various attempts by me and Ellie, because we had the same agent earlier on in Go 8-bit's process, to try to get a Go 8-bit book over the line. And that never quite happened. You sort of get a spin-off book from a show, don't you? It's a Christmas stocking filler or whatever. And that never happened. But I was quite keen to write a book about gaming anyway. I'd read a lot of sort of the core texts and enjoyed them and found it fascinating, but also was aware that the books tended to focus on just certain elements and aspects of gaming. So some of the books very much focus on console history, which isn't really relevant in the same way in the 80s in the UK. We were all about 8-bit and 16-bit computing. There's also the early online gaming and server stuff, and the sort of prehistory stuff, which was always fascinating to me. Not prehistory, but you know what I mean, sort of before pre-Pong.
Yeah.
And so I felt, as somebody who consumes games in the same way that Go 8-bit was me attempting to make an entertaining gaming show that I'd like to watch, I wanted to write the book I thought didn't exist that I'd like to read about gaming. And so I managed to convince a publisher, because at the time Go 8-bit was successful and renewed and doing well, convinced the publisher to pay me in advance to write a book about video games. And I decided that what I would attempt to do was write a comprehensive history of what I felt was retro games up to a point, that would cover every aspect of it. So the book deliberately covers arcades, consoles, computing, online, and the evolution of that through time. It's why the chapters are the way they are and they're structured the way they are. But what I attempted to do was genuinely tell a thorough story of the various strands of the history of gaming and the ways in which they did or didn't interweave. And I would have quite happily written that as a very dry text, but I am, in inverted commas, your mileage may vary, but I am a comedian, and I was on a comedy show about games, and also a lovely man called Paul Byrne, who we sadly lost this year. He passed away earlier this year, but he was a writing partner to me and a director and friend, and he. Because he was working up with me on the stand-up spin-off show to the book, which we could talk about if you want to. We don't have to. But because he was working with me on this stand-up show I was doing off the back of it all, I was sharing with him the book, and he was very supportive and loved the book. But what he said was, it doesn't have your voice. I don't understand why this is Steve McNeil's book about video games. So what the sort of final pass on that book, I guess, if the first one was reading everything and making notes on everything, and the second was telling that in a way that actually makes sense, which was really difficult because it is messy, history of gaming. The third pass of that was then personalizing it with my relation with those things, and trying on every page to either be amusing if possible, and add something of myself to the book, which incidentally, depending on whether you like me or hate me, will determine entirely whether you enjoy or hate my book, as is apparent from online reviews of it. So depending on what you think of me will determine whether you like it. But for better or worse, that book is, I think, at the time of writing it, the most comprehensive history of gaming, but told with a lightness of touch that hopefully means more than the hardcore nerd can read and enjoy it. And for the people who do like what I do, that tends to have been the feedback that people really like it. So yeah.
But with the audio book, and I've noticed this, and I think I can't remember, there is another audio book that does this, that it drives me up the wall a little bit, because it's never anyone's fault apart from Audible. But they do this thing where you say the name of the chapter, right? For instance, you say chapter 1, and on the Audible app it's chapter 3.
Yeah, because they index it differently. Sure.
Yeah,
I can't do anything about that, Tom. It's too late.
no, but
sorry.
But is that not your fault, or is that Audible's fault? Who are we blaming?
I'm not blaming. I mean, I'm knackered, Tom. I'm not blaming anyone. But if you need to blame someone, let's blame Audible, because I don't have the appetite for a fight. Well,
in the words of some musicians, I predict a riot.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah. I didn't know where I was going with that, so I was
I know.
I came out with that. So not only have you had this extensive career of doing books.
It sounds like I'm going to die soon. I mean, I might, I guess. But yeah, so it's like an obituary, this, isn't it?
Your career is still spanning, but
let's hope so. Yeah.
But how did you end up? Because it was a weird time for Challenge TV. But how did you get involved in Video Game Nation? Because it's a slightly weirder thing from what Challenge was producing. Like,
well, that's pre-Go 8-bit Video Game Nation. So that was actually the thing that finally let me make the leap from having a day job to not. Was when we started doing Go 8-bit as a live show. The first channel we approached in the very early days was Jinx TV, which are a little known satellite or cable channel in the UK and internationally, that for about £4 make various shows about gaming. And so we were pitching to them initially, because that seemed like the most likely home, whether or not we could make a version of it with them. And that might have just been filming the live show and editing it nicely and sticking it on their channel, and then trying to syndicate it, sell it out elsewhere. And that never quite came to pass. But because I knew about games and loved games, but also could, if I dare flatter myself, write about them engagingly and be engaging on screen, I started to write for a very early version of Video Game Nation, and then progressed over time to having my own segment on it, and then becoming a talking head when the format changed. I started writing. I was the main reviewer of video games for Jinx TV for about a year and a half. So I would play the games and write the segments, and then do all the game capture for the edit. I made like these 4.5 minute like modular pieces about video games for their channel, a lot of it. And so that was really where I cut my teeth, writing in a in an amusing or interesting way about video games. I made a TV series about Minecraft, like a whole 6 episodes for them. They did another show called Console Yourself, or Console Yourself. It works in writing, doesn't work when you say it out loud. But that was comedians talking about video games, which was produced by a guy called Simon Longdon, who we ended up bringing on as an AP on Go 8-Bit. So that's the second of the Simons. Simon London. I don't know if we'll talk about him today, but he's in there somewhere. Yeah, so Video Game Nation was very much Jinx TV's baby, and which I managed to find my home in. I think I sort of co-hosted a couple of them towards the end when Dan was busy. It was a really nice show. Again, that was a show where, like DLC, it was made by people who knew about games and loved them, and we were sort of allowed to do what we wanted. Adam Mason, who produced that, was a great producer who managed to make it look far better than it had any right to, based on the budget. I'm very proud of my involvement in that show. I think it was a very good show. It's a shame that you can't get a more broad audience for something like that. And but I don't think TV will ever do that. I think online serves that audience well enough that it's difficult to describe. It's a shame because there was some really nice things we did in it, I think.
Yeah, and I think I've actually seen a few bits and bobs on Jinx TV. I think it's still knocking about. If it's the same,
it is. It still exists. Yeah.
Well, the very next channel on Sky, the very next channel is the dog racing.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Because Jinx, because video games, like you could be watching like them playing Call of Duty or whatever knockoff they've made next to be like Call of Duty, or you go to a couple of dogs running about on a track for a few minutes, which. It's weird because that's getting to the bottom of the listing of how many channels that are still knocking about on Sky.
Sure.
Because they become non-English after that.
Yeah, Jinx isn't a premium slot on the Sky EPG. That's fair. So.
Well, Video Game Nation is actually available on YouTube, and so not only have you been this like amazing person that's done TV, you've done whatever, you've also done something that earlier this year I attempted, but it fell flat and it fell face before I could even get there. You've won and broken a couple Guinness World Record. I don't know if the word couple is correct, but I know you've definitely.
No, we broke a Guinness World Records at the Royal Institution the second year we were there, I think. So the BBC Click filmed it. So there's a video of it on YouTube. There was a world record, a ridiculous world record, as they all are really. Most people to play a single game of Pong. So I think we broke the previous record and set a new record at 286 players. We have since been overtaken by the people who we beat before. And since then, the Guinness thing's a bit of a weird thing because you sort of have to pay them money to do it unless they get to be on the telly and get some profile for Guinness. So we've never bothered to go through the filling out the forms and the hoops to do it again. But we've done Pong with like 3,000 people since then. So we're way beyond what the record is, but haven't bothered to formally recognize that again. And in all of that, I'm saying we, by which I mean Rob Sedgebeer, the genius, made the technology that makes that possible, and I am also there.
And what was it like winning the Guinness World Record? Because I saw someone do one record that I thought, it's easy, and then I was going to do it, and every time I said, "Can I do it in wherever I wanted to?" they all went no. So I amped it up on YouTube saying, "Oh, I'm going to do this." Made 3 videos on it, and then it just went away. I was going to do the most jokes in a minute, and
right,
and I couldn't find
any jokes.
I could find that. That would be easy. The hard bit was to find the rules on the Guinness website.
Yeah, awesome.
This bloke had originally done it, and then some German bloke had done it, and then the same bloke had tried to beat the German bloke, but the same bloke decided to tell jokes in a minute on Newsnight, which isn't always. And there was no audience. So the whole point of the Guinness World Records, you have to have an audience involved.
I can tell you're angry, Tom, and it doesn't matter. Don't judge your self-worth based on what others think of you or your success.
The audience have to laugh at you.
You're still going. All right, yeah, go on. No, get it off your chest. Go on, Tom.
Or make a noise like a ha ha or a oh or a oh no. Like you have to breathe air loudly.
Feels like therapy now, Tom. I'll be honest. Go on.
He did on Newsnight. And there was no audience and no one laughed. And apparently he won the record, even though he wearing a Tommy Cooper hat.
I'm really sorry, Tom.
So were you very excited? Were you very
I
excited?
don't, Tom. I don't think this is about me and the Guinness record at all. I think it's about you.
Were you very
Yes, I was excited.
yeah. Wait,
Yeah.
did you end up framing your Guinness World Record?
No, I think I gave it to my mum and dad's. Rob's got one. I haven't got one. But Rob had the one they gave us, and I think you could pay to get another one, so I got my parents' one.
You could have just photocopied it. It would have been free.
Would it? I've no idea. But yeah, no, it wasn't genuinely. It was amazing. That's to be vaguely serious. Like that at the time, I think where we would have placed it. It was a very exciting time to be us, because that would have been 2016. I'm now wondering whether it was in the first show, but I don't think it was. I think it was in the second show. So if it was 2016, we would have filmed Go 8-Bit, but it hadn't been on the telly yet.
Yeah.
So we didn't know if the TV show was going to work. But Rob and I, as a result of our hard work alongside Go 8-Bit, I got to a point where independently, the BBC were going to film us breaking a Guinness World Record at our show at the Royal Institution. And as a sentence to say out loud, as a nerd, that's quite a nice thing. So it was a very special day. We did both work really hard. Rob worked harder, but we did both work really hard to make it work and make it good. And it remains one of the highlights of, you know, our career. It was that's a good day at work, isn't it? That's all the cool things at once. It's the RI and the BBC and the Guinness World Record, and it's me and Rob in the middle of it going, we're brilliant. So that ego wise, that feels really nice.
A lot of people said, "Oh, I've had a terrible day at work. I sat at the office, typey.
Indeed.
And you can go, well, I had an amazing day. I want to get it for record. No, it's nothing. It's not a big deal. It's just an average day at work.
It's not an average day at work at all. But by doing what we do, I am blessed to never have to do the daily grind. I get to enjoy my work, and I treasure that every day, Tom.
They say do what you love. I've not seen that become true just yet for many people. And so with your career still being in its I'm gonna say this so you don't have to, in its youthful
we'll see. We'll see.
It might all come crashing down after this.
Sure. Imagine if that was the pinnacle. I mean, there's every chance, Tom. Like, I had been on a TV show for a bit. There's every chance that was at the top, and it's just all downhill from now until I die.
And so what?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. We want to keep this chill.
Keep it light. Keep it light.
Not morbid. No, I can do that later.
All right.
I can do that in the edit. Just to put it all.
Go on. I'm in my youth. Go on.
Yeah, you're in your youth. Your early 20s. And so what's next for Steve McNeil? What is next for you?
That's a very good question. I don't know, Tom. This isn't going to sound glamorous, but it's the reality of a gigging comic, like places like Northampton, Basingstoke, Southend, like market towns or cities in the regions, non-London. And we've sold out and sold really well at regional centres when we've never played a show there in our life. And the people that are coming to it aren't coming because of Go 8-Bit or even because they've been to Wi-Fi Wars before. People are, for the first time, seeing that we exist and taking a punt on us. And it's been really reassuring. So, and that first sort of tranche that we booked so we could drive there and back in a day to save money. We'll start to go further afield to like Manchester, Edinburgh, and places where we do an overnight, because we're now reassured that actually financially it makes sense to. So as somebody who started out, if you go all the way back to the beginning of my career, just going on stage, and it's really nice that actually a big part of what I think I'm going to be doing next year is going to be that, is getting out on the road. And you know, as you talked about, there's a way, there is something. There was a point in my 30s where I was delighted as an egomaniac to have my own TV show and be successful. It didn't give me the pleasure and happiness or financial security that I maybe hoped it would. And actually, as you get a bit older, because I am, whatever we think, being able to do what I love on my own terms and make a living doing that is a wonderful thing. So lots more live shows. Also, I've sort of become known as somebody who has successfully created things that make gaming entertaining and accessible. So I've done a lot of producing work for TikTok, for online streams on their platform, and at live events like Eurogamer. ZGX. I was just assistant producer on Lost Voice Guys ITV1 Christmas special because I like Christmas. So I wrote a lot of jokes for that, and I assistant produced it with the producer Rohan Acharya,
Hey.
who was the director of that first show I was in and produced great bits. So I'm very lucky that I have a small but wonderful family of people around me in my career who we continue to enjoy making fun things. And when I was younger, I think it was far more about my ego. I don't mean I'm not a narcissist, but when you're trying to build a career in entertainment, you want it to be you.
Yeah.
I don't have that drive or concern anymore. I feel like I'm confident in what I am and can do. That actually being behind the scenes on Lee Lost Voice Guys show, seeing him deliver a joke I'd written and getting a laugh and getting paid for that and getting to go home, I had a lovely day. I don't know what the future brings, but if it can bring a job where I am involved in things that make people laugh and feel better, that sounds very sincere, but it's true. That's enough for me. And luckily, that continues to be a thing I'm able to do.
As Ken Dodd always says, happiness, nothing more than you can give.
I don't think he does say that. I think you've got it wrong. But I enjoyed you reaching for it.
Yeah.
He definitely says happiness.
Yeah.
I think he says, I think happiness, the greatest gift that we possess.
That's it.
Yes, which isn't what you said, Tom.
No,
if you're going to quote someone, the most important rule is say the words they said.
Yeah.
Little pointer for you as you're starting out in this. Do say the actual words when you quote them, Tom.
say the right ones. Just imagine all the key speeches where they say the words completely wrong.
Yeah.
We found them on the beaches. No, we'll fight them on the.
Yeah. As Martin Luther King once said, "Oh, I had a funny dream." No, that's not right, Tom. It's not right.
No. So, coming towards the end of this glorious interview, because it is, all my interviews have been glorious. So, if anyone's missing, if anyone's thinking, Tom, you haven't done many interviews, well, look at my other 12.
Done some great interviews, guys. Get on it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that jingly bell, whatever it is that you have to do now. I don't know. I'm old.
I don't know that either. I just witter and hope they watch.
Good luck.
And so hopefully you guys will stay tuned because there's more coming. So if you check Tom's Comedy Club, there'll be a load more coming. And if you want to see me witter on to people that are probably only just walking up, well, go to Taskmaster Wood. They're all in New Zealand, so you can go and watch them. But to round this off, I would like to say check out Steve's book. And what would you like to, because we're coming towards the end, and I'll give you what the time we've got left. What do you want to promote to the audience right now?
I don't want to promote anything. Money's tight, and you're all doing your best. But if you enjoy me, you can watch Go 8-Bit and Go 8-Bit DLC on UK TV's Player online. I've got a book. I've got a stand-up DVD, which has got loads of extras on it as well. You can get that from gofasterstrap.com. Come to one of the live shows, but just my website, stevemcneil.co.uk. It's all on there. But you don't have to give me a penny. Just look after yourselves because it's horrible. But if you like me, those are the things that exist.
Yeah, and there you go. And if you haven't seen Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit,
oh, Dara O'Brien.
What on earth are you doing? You're wasting your time watching Peppa Pig. Go watch this. Tell your kids.
I love that that's the two choices. What are we going to watch tonight, darling? Dara O'Brien's Go 8-Bit or Peppa Pig?
Well, I don't
incredible insight into your mind, Tom. Those were the two that you.
But my mind is so weird. Around the corner from me, I'll mention this now. Around the corner, I have a ZX Spectrum around the corner.
Very nice.
And also around the corner, I have a hi-fi and I have VHSs knocked about because I have a VHS player that still works and still plugged into a TV.
What sort of hi-fi you got? Is it separate, or is it
It's one of the big stack one with a record player at the top. You have your radio and you have your cassette.
Lovely stuff.
You play and pause and
yes, mate.
You do the Peter Kay sketch of the top 40s.
I don't know that one.
Playing and pausing and dancing. Yeah, because it's quicker. I don't know. We'll leave it there. So, if you want to see more from my face and hear my mouth speak, there's a video on the main channel right now, Tom Macy, if you want to go and raise your eyes on some Doctor Who extravagances. there'll be something exciting coming to Tom's Comedy Club. You can see me attempt stand up for the second time, which obviously doesn't work because I have to pretend to laugh myself because it's filmed in front of a chair. Which obviously...
hang on. I know we've got to wrap up. I've got to go and pick the kid up, but you had this whole thing earlier about doing it on Newsnight and there wasn't anybody there, so it didn't count as jokes. And now you're telling me you've got a stand-up video where there's no bugger there.
Well,
you're a hypocrite, Tom.
Well, yeah. Well, he was doing it even Newsnight. Why would you want to do stand-up on Newsnight?
Why would you want to do stand-up at a chair?
Oh, well, I mean, the chair was just stale, so it didn't find it funny. Which we know about Asda and about a baby called Asda. And it was
chairs are notoriously tough crowds, so don't take it to heart, Tom.
Yeah, very stale. So anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching, and remember, no.